Well, as soon as it says go live, okay. Hey, Bernadette, how you doing, sweetie? Sending you so much love. And everyone, love you, love you, love you. Many of you I don't see, but you all are talking to each other, so that's a good thing. Please like and share, like and share, like and share, like and subscribe the show. They're messing with our algorithm, but we're not going to let that stop us. It's amazing. It's amazing. So, what happened to Ronnie Abu? Okay, we're going to get her back. And my phone. That's what I forgot to do. Okay, so you all, just in the interest of, there you go. I'm going to get this thing going in 15. Okay, and under 10. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Yes, I have a different backdrop. I'm in a hotel this morning because I've been at the Congressional Black Caucus weekend. I have been broadcasting to you for the past few days from here. It has been quite something. It's more than 50 years of age, and the charge came from Ossie Davis, the great Ossie Davis, who said, "It's not the man, it's the plan." He said that at their first dinner. And then uh, Shirley Chisholm said, "We are unbought and unbossed." She said that about the Black Caucus. There are now 62 members. We've never had that many African Americans serving in both houses of the U.S. Congress in our history. So hats off to them. We've got a lot of work to do today, so let's get to it. Let's look at the United Nations. What a week. What a week it has been. And nothing has been more stunning than, and maybe more anticipated than, President Trump's speech and President, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. People wanted to know, what is he going to say? Because now the UK, which is central to the founding of Israel, they've said we need a two-state solution. He is adamantly opposed to that, he and his uh, allies. But what does all of that mean? They keep calling for Hamas to do something that, and then when Hamas agrees to it, they withdraw. But what was stunning? What was stunning? What was stunning about this meeting, beyond the fact that he is known for being dogged in his assertions, forceful, never backing down? He spoke to a mostly empty room. That's what was stunning. And if you looked at different news outlets, those on the right said he said this, it was wild applause. They were in the gallery. No one was on the floor. The world literally walked out on Prime Minister Netanyahu. What does that say? Where is this cause? And what are the other shifts that we're going to see? I mean, be mindful of the fact that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has called hundreds of top military brass to meet in Virginia this week. It's secret, and now he is not allowing the press to fully report on that. So we really don't know what's going on here. We really don't. We can suspect, but this issue is really central to what is going on in the world. We saw a general strike in Italy. A general strike means that everybody stopped working for a day, and millions of people were in the streets. We're seeing that all over the world, of course, led by South Africa, who took Israel to the International Court of Justice. But now something is different. It seems that something has happened when you speak to an empty room, and he appeared to be momentarily disconcerted. If you read body language, just momentarily disconcerted to see everybody literally get up and walk out as he was beginning to speak. So we can look at those, we can look at body language and all of that, but we also need to look at, and that's important, we also need to look at policy, because the reason I mentioned him looking momentarily disconcerted is because he's been able to function with so much certainty, so much certitude for so long. But something has changed. And something has changed in the United States with young people on the right and the left. We need to talk about that this morning. Hello, Andre. Hello, Dave Dowling. Bernadette got here before everybody else did. And of course, Renee sending you so much love this morning. Let's get to it. Of course, we have a tremendous panel. We've got Ariel Gold from the Fellowship of Reconciliation, Jonah Kirsch from If Not Now, We've Missed You, Jonah. I'm so glad to see you. Dr. Alia Amar, social justice advocate, and of course, Ronnie Patrice, a Palestinian American activist. All of you are active in so many different sectors. But, Ronnie, let me start with you. What did you make? I'm going to start, from the bottom of the clock and work my way around this way. How about that? So, Ronnie, you tell me, what did you make of the Netanyahu speech? And maybe what was more stunning, or what was at least as stunning, was the reaction to it. Him speaking to an empty room. Rania?
Yeah, well, so we remember that happened last year too. I think there were even fewer people left in the room this year than last year's UNGA,
Yeah.
but this is um not new, and I think that's where I get really frustrated because it's not new, and we continue to have a lot of inaction and a lot of heads of state and leaders around the world talking about two-state solution and having the two-state solution conference and calling people together and all these things and recognizing Palestinian state, which obviously as a Palestinian, of course I want to see. However, they're calling these conferences to talk about recognition and two-state solutions while a genocide is still going on, while the West Bank has it's not being annexed, it has been annexed. No one's saying it, but it is. The number of demolitions and forced expulsions and the ecocide that's happening in the West Bank, which gets no media attention at all. It's happened, it's happening right now. And I have to talk about, just in the nature of my work, these Oscar winners in the West Bank have no protection. So imagine what's happening to people who haven't been on a world stage and have not accepted an Oscar. And again, that's just the West Bank. The genocide is still ongoing in the Gaza Strip, and so my level of frustration is, and I think for a lot of us, is at an all-time high because we keep having these conversations and nobody is talking about the actual war crimes that are continuing to be committed, the genocide that is ongoing. They want to have these gatherings and make themselves feel better and frankly placate their citizens, because the citizens of the United States and Italy and Spain and France, etc., you can go around the world, understand what needs to happen here, and the governments are not reacting appropriately. So this is sort of, oh, we're going to placate everybody by doing these bare minimum things and talking ourselves to death, but not actually talking about ending the genocide and ending the atrocities that are literally still happening right now. And I also just have to say, I'm so sorry, even for the members of Congress right here in the United States who continuously talk about a two-state solution. The Knesset in Israel voted unequivocally that there will never be a two-state solution. So why are we talking about this? Why are we pretending like these things aren't happening? This is not going to accident, the state of Israel pre-Netanyahu. Netanyahu and his administration are monsters. We know that. But this was happening well before Netanyahu was ever in place. The number of times he served as prime minister, it continues to happen. And we keep pretending like we live in a world that we don't live in. This is not going to happen by accident. And people need to, these heads of state, these world leaders, our own governments need to stop pretending like it is.
Well, I mean, I hear the frustration, and we don't hear enough of that, in media, because you're right. More and more people have been walking out. I think what was stunning was just to see just almost an empty uh, room that he was speaking to,
Mhm.
and I think that uh, that was anticipated, which is why he brought his friends with him.
Hmm.
That hadn't been
Which of
said.
course they blamed.
Mhm.
Sorry,
Yeah,
the talking point is that the PA packed the room. The PA who couldn't get their visas to attend, by the
right.
way. packed the room. So the
The Palestinian
absurdity of
Authority.
the Palestinian Authority, apologies. Yeah, that they packed the room so that they could all walk out, which is just it's slightly amusing if we can like put the grotesqueness of this moment aside. That's literally the propaganda machine churning. And frankly, these types of things used to work. The state of Israel has been operating under this propaganda machine for decades and decades and decades, and it's worked for so long. We're not winning anymore, but they're still at it. They're still trying. And then, of course, I'm sure people saw that after that speech, he met with a bunch of influencers, and the answer to how do we combat Candace Owen and Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene is, oh, we have to buy TikTok. That's the answer. I just like need people to wrap their brains around that. It's so what we need to do is purchase these platforms so that we can ensure our propaganda is getting out there to the masses. That's the answer from
Yeah, I think they
Benjamin
need to wrap.
Netanyahu.
Yeah, I think they need to wrap their minds around people leaving those platforms, because that is going to happen too. That is a
Yep. Yep.
Oh, hubris, hubris, hubris is never a good thing. It's just never a good thing.
Yes.
Dr. Amar, your thoughts?
You know what? It's a issue of control, constant manipulation, constant propaganda. And I agree, very much that I think that all people supporting Palestine are tired of half measures and tired of lies, just, full of it. You can have these gestures that come far too late with far too little backup. You can have speeches, but if those speeches are not being followed up with action, speeches from the countries that have supported Israeli aggression for decades, speeches from countries that were formative in turning over Palestinian land to Zionists, speeches from people that have one face in public and another face behind the scenes as they commit genocide, as they threaten to expand that beyond any reasonable suggestion of a border for Israel. We're looking at attacks on our allies in the Gulf, places where we have U.S. military installations, and they're being attacked, and the U.S. is trying to play this odd balance game of, my goodness, how do I keep both of my friends happy? Well, you can't. Sometimes you really do simply have to look at the truth, because that, at the end of the day, is what the people are looking at. The people can see that Gazans have been starved and bombed, and that there are child amputees and hospitals with almost nothing that resembles any standard of care, but are somehow trying with these desperate, desperate doctors to save lives for whatever amount of time they can. We grew up in the United States on Westerns. And Westerns, I was thinking about this morning. Westerns became very popular in the 1950s. This is also around the time that they started putting up those Confederate statues. Confederate statues weren't being put up in 1865. They were being put up in 1955. And so there was a machinery of the state in the United States to push more support behind white supremacy at that time. And I dare say it continued. But the way in which media was used at that time, the way in which television was used, was to give us things like the Western. And the Western said that settlers were good, and people defending their traditional lands, their tribal lands, their own culture and space, beliefs and practices, that those were the evil people, those were the savages. And if you think that that narrative has left us, it hasn't. We transferred that narrative onto a multicultural Palestine that was brought to horrible consequences after the first Nakba, after the first theft of land and oppression of people. We have sided in the United States with the oppressors because we are the oppressors. This falls in line with many of our foreign agendas. It falls in line with what we do in African countries. It falls in line with what we do in Latin America. But when it comes to the Palestinian people, we have been destructive at levels that are inhumane. We use our veto in the UN to blockade anything that could be positive, that could move us towards a two-state solution, that could bring an end to this. And we send the bombs. So I don't expect any of this to change because a handful of countries said we're willing to recognize that the people who have been on this land for thousands and thousands of years ought to have a state recognized internationally.
You know, I'm going to save you for last, Jonah. He has the place of honor as being the young man. Well, you know, we have to take care of our baby. I know he is like, I'm a grown man. I know you are. But, you know, I'm your auntie. There we go. Ariel Gold. We're
You
all
know,
your aunties here. There we go.
it's not unusual for there to be an empty room when Netanyahu is speaking at the UN. This has been for quite a few years and predates even the genocide in Gaza. I mean, Israel is really a rogue state, and the other countries in the UN by and large recognize that. And Netanyahu bringing his own little, applause track delegation, that's not new as well. But what I was thinking about was there has been an indictment. There has been an indictment for war crimes, and I know the UN cannot prevent the US from allowing Netanyahu to fly in and come into the country, right? That's not something they have the ability to do. Well, why? And I was thinking this is as this happened. Why are they allowing him to speak when there is an arrest warrant?
Wait. But wait a minute, Ariel. They won't let the Palestinians come.
Well, that's the U.S. that won't let them come.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the UN can't control what the U.S. does that way.
Yeah.
And I am a believer in you still keep people in the room, or that's what diplomacy is. But hello, there's an arrest warrant. Why would that particular Israeli speaker be allowed to come into the same body that has issued an arrest? Now, I get it as well that the UN doesn't have the mechanism to arrest him there or to detain him there. It's inside the US. That isn't the, unfortunately, that the UN doesn't have that power. But they do have the power to say you are not welcome in this building. That is the UN building. There's a warrant for your arrest by our courts. So, that just puzzles me. And I am very curious to know if other heads of state charged with war crimes, with warrants out for them, have been allowed to speak at the UN. Because I would have thought that Israel should have to send some lackey who is too unimportant in their country to have a warrant issued for their arrest yet. This is ridiculous. That is something that the United Nations could do, and shame on them for not doing so. Shame on them for allowing him to come and give his propaganda speech and his Hasbara garbage. And I was also particularly disgusted by, they blasted that speech through loudspeakers into Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
Just layers of cruelty
and on people's phones. I mean, let me just the phone thing too. The loudspeaker is disgusting enough, but that is the level of control that
what do you mean?
Israel,
the phone.
they literally
Palestinian phones in Gaza.
The
people of Gaza had to listen to the speech of he's declaring himself their savior, if beyond comprehension, and that the United Nations did not cut the mic and say this is unacceptable. We are the United Nations. We don't have an armed force. We can't come in with handcuffs and take you out. But we're not allowing this. Anyway, that's my rant.
No, but I want you to say something, because you had a lot of people who really continue to give him cover and excuses, because that happened at the same time. So, Jonah, your thoughts, because something is happening here. Part of the reason that we've had a capture of TikTok, which they've been trying to capture for some time, is because young people, that is one of your portals, one of your mechanisms for communication. And we know that there's been a generational shift on the right and the left. I mean, even Charlie Kirk was having to pivot because he was about to lose his base. I mean, I'm not saying he had a change of heart. I don't know. God rest his soul. But I do know that he was having a real challenge with his donors and his base. That's a real thing. So talk to me. What did you make of this speech, and what do you think of what do you make of this moment in which we find ourselves?
Well, I think, there is a shift that has been ongoing for many years, and it's accelerated. And on the one hand, I'm grateful to see the shift, and I'm grateful to see that the public opinion polling in the U.S. for the first time in my lifetime, many of our lifetimes, is reflecting that the majority of us are seeing the reality of what's going on. And certainly in the Democratic Party, it's a substantial supermajority. And our elected officials haven't, by and large, followed suit yet. I'm happy to see the shift. I think the U.S. is catching up with the world and those folks that walked out. I think Europe is maybe just a tiny bit ahead of the U.S. with these symbolic gestures like recognizing a Palestinian state, which, while consequentially on the ground is probably, unfortunately, not going to have much of an impact, the fact that Israel is so upset about it, I think, says that at least means something. But that's the one hand. And the other hand is that at what cost? This shift was precipitated by the genocide, the complete destruction of a society, and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of men, women, and children being slaughtered for 2 years now. And if that's what it took to get France to say there should be a Palestinian state, let alone to get anyone else to cut off the weapons that actually enable this, then shame on us. We were saying in October of 2023, and I still stand by this, that this can end with a phone call. I really do still believe it. You can cut off the weapons. Donald Trump, Joe Biden could have done it too, can get on the phone with the prime minister and say that the weapons aren't coming anymore. And it would work. I really do believe it. Every single time in history that the U.S. has even vaguely threatened to cut off weapons or any sort of financial support for Israel, things have stopped. And that's what we've been waiting for all of these 2 years. And we see symbolic gestures. We see people in the streets. We see in Chicago some of my colleagues and friends going on hunger strikes. And it hasn't been enough. I appreciate the shifts, and it hasn't been fast enough. Any day, any time that a bomb drops on a child is an emergency, and we have to stop the emergency.
Well, Jonah, why, you make the point that America does have this power, and yet, one has to wonder, are they the captain or are they the captured? Because they don't move in the direction in which the American people increasingly are wanting them to move. I mean, and their allies are wanting them to move. This is incredibly destabilizing, and for America's troops. I mean, it's like, everybody, let's start thinking these things through, because it's not just troops who are in the Middle East or who are in other parts of the world. People all over the world do not agree with our policy there. And they take that out on our representatives there. We've seen this happen before. So what do you think is going on, Jonah? I mean, why? I mean, what do you, what's the holdup, if you will?
Well, I think, there are multiple schools of thought on this. There's one school of thought that, of course, the United States is supporting Israel. There's the quote from Joe Biden saying, if there wasn't an Israel in the Middle East, we would have had to create one in order to serve our interests. And absolutely, it's the case that, at least from the perspective of a national security establishment, Israel represents like a beacon of U.S. interests in the Middle East, whatever U.S. interests are supposed to mean. and that Israel will share intelligence with the United States and things like that. And I think that's part of the reason why some elected officials support Israel, but I don't think it explains everything, certainly in 2025. I do think we have to look at the influence of lobbies like AIPAC, which can kick people out of Congress if they speak up. I mean, when you have 75% of the Democratic Party saying that you need to cut off weapons to Israel, it's probably more than that now. But something like that, also calling it a genocide. And just now you have the Progressive Caucus coming out and endorsing the Block the Bombs Act, thankfully. But we don't know what the breakdown of that vote was. As a result of the caucus endorsing, we didn't see a whole ton more members of the caucus hopping on the bill. So we have maybe a quarter of the Democratic caucus in the House, when the supermajority of their voters care about this issue. And I don't think, with all due respect to theories of imperialism, which are super pertinent and important, that most congressional Democrats are thinking in terms of, well, we need to support Israel because of U.S. interests. Maybe the ones that are never going to venture away from that. I do think it's about a fear of backlash from powerful lobbies. And it's not a conspiracy of Jewish control. This is organized money kicking people out of Congress, organized money coming from Republicans, some of whom are not Jewish. And they kicked out members of the squad, and no one wants to be the next Cori Bush or Jamal Bowman. And I think that explains a lot of what's going on too. And around the world, I think the European countries are afraid of the United States and don't want to get too far out in front of us. But I would defer to the more expert analysts that do this full time that are on this call. Curious everyone else's thoughts.
Yeah, I would love to jump in, if that's okay, Santita, on just a couple of things, because I think all of your points, Jonah, are so spot on and so important. And we've always existed in this, sadly, in this place where, in recent history anywhere, where members of Congress have not represented their constituents. I mean, and I always bring up the idea of very simple thing, universal background checks, which in the last decade have been anywhere between 85% and 97% approval across the board for universal background checks. It's not a funny joke. You can't get 97% Americans to agree on the weather, and they agreed that universal background checks are bottom of the barrel. And yet Congress won't touch it. So we've existed in this place for so long where our elected representatives who are supposed to work for us don't work for us. And it's the lobbies. It's exactly like you said, Jonah. It is the AIPACs, it is the DMFIs, and all of their subsidiaries. There's so many little subsidiaries that come out of it. And I know I'm never Captain Optimism here, but I am just going to say a few things that we are at 52 members of Congress now who have signed on to the Block the Bombs Act, which is that enough? Of course it's not. But we couldn't get 30 on Betty McCollum's bill, just asking for tax dollars not to be used to imprison and torture children, Palestinian children. We couldn't get to 30 on that. So as disgusting and awful and gut-wrenching and horrific as it is, we are seeing a shift, and we are seeing the fear sort of turn on its head, where we're actually seeing members of Congress who have taken so much money from AIPAC who are coming out public. Do I trust them? Of course not. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them, but they are coming out publicly saying, I'm not taking money from AIPAC, because the fear is shifting. So where it was, just like Jonah said, it was a fear of being called anti-Semitic, being attacked, having a bunch of money spent against them, being primaried, or not even being primaried, but just having the money spent against them, which has historically worked. We are seeing that shift. Now, my warning to all of us is that does not stay by accident either. We have to keep the pressure on, and we have to keep pushing, because let me tell you, the moment we look away, they're going to be right back at it, right back at the same old BS that they've been at for so long. So we cannot look away. And then I will also say, I'm so sorry. I'm you're attending my TED Talk today, but the reality that we're
Talk
existing in
TED Talk.
right now, But the reality, and we're seeing it in Chicago. We're seeing it now. The threat is in Portland. We saw it in LA. It is not just about Palestinian people. Let's be very, very clear here. And the idea, this, we talk about it all the time. Santita and I, my God, how many times have we talked about collective liberation and how we are all interconnected in this struggle? They started with Palestinians on purpose. He started with Palestinians on purpose. Biden too, frankly. The idea that nobody cares about Palestinian people because we've dehumanized the Palestinian people for so long that no one's going to care. And then we're going to escalate into other Black and brown communities, because once we topple that domino, it's a little easier. I have one of my dear friends and clients is Kat Abelazali, who's running for Congress in Illinois, and she's been at the forefront of these protests in Chicago. The things that they're sending me, it looks like a war zone in Chicago. Outside Chicago and Broadview, but still, they
Which
put
is
up a
Chicagoland.
fence.
It's
Yes,
Chicagoland.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And they
Well, they
put up a
attacked her.
fence.
They
But
attacked her.
but let me say this:
Yes,
the
they
state is
did.
ultimately, I
Yeah.
think, a police state.
Yes.
That's being
Yes.
normalized. We've been doing that since 9/11.
Yeah.
You get to the airport, you get patted down. You take off. You take your clothes off, and they become frustrated with me because my jewelry sitting over there. I come in ready for my close up, and if you wouldn't wear all of it, I'm like, no, honey, I didn't come here to be undressed. Now you all just do what you want. We'll take everything. No, 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 and that resistance, I know, flags me. But let me go back to something else, because I think that we've got to, while we're looking at the lobbies, what we've got to do is we've got to look at the people, at the entities that fund the lobbies. Lobbies work for donors, they work for corporations, they work for entities. Look, it's easier to focus on big pharma, but if you don't focus on the companies for whom they're advocating, we're missing the point. You miss when I boycott, I don't boycott a lobby, I've got to boycott the company. And I think we've got to look at who has a financial interest in letting this continue, because that is clear. And that is not, that goes be, look, let's look at that. Because, I had Dr. James Zogby on Reverend Jackson's radio show a little earlier today. Just before we came on here. And he expressed frustration with Arab leadership at the end. He said, wait a minute. Now they've got to get on the stick. We've got France and the UK, at least rhetorically, who they have said, look, this is what you must do. You must acknowledge that we're acknowledging a Palestinian state. To many of them, and I've said this, I understand, Dr. Amar, I've known these people all my life too. Now I understand the risk that you take when you speak truth to power. I've grown up with security all of my life. So what? At some point, it's like, wait a minute, you cannot continue to not push back against what is happening here. This is awful.
Well, especially when it's beginning to push, my understanding around the GCC countries and the positions that they take is reflective, because there's also the point of, if they come out and they say certain things, they buck the trends against U.S. policy or things like that, they leave themselves vulnerable to this highly aggressive state that is supported and does want to take their territories and is now encroaching on them. If you look at Netanyahu's map of his problematic zones, it steps right up to the UAE and Saudi Arabia. And that has been the goal ever since they came into power.
They're sitting on his land, that in his thinking,
in his view. And so the problem is, and this is not just a problem, I think, for the GCC countries. Egypt has had to walk this balance a great deal. Jordan and Lebanon have had to walk this balance a great deal, because you can push back, but you can only do it so far without risking the safety of your own people. And those are the people that you have sworn to protect and represent at the end of the day. Despite that, though, there have been a number of actions sort of behind the scenes, things that some people will decry as half measures, but they're not insignificant. There have been calls for ceasefire. There have been aid attempts. There have been attempts to broker and help negotiate. And so, there's the upfront activist sort of response that I think a lot of us viscerally enjoy. And there's the quiet diplomacy of protecting your people while attempting to protect your brothers and sisters that I hope is a true part of what's happening, and not just me being sort of Pollyanna-ish about
I don't think you're being
relations.
Pollyanna-ish. Let me just say this. Just before, not too long before Yasser Arafat died, he and Reverend Jackson were great friends. He and Reverend and Mrs. Jackson first were great friends. And they wanted him to come and speak to what became the Palestinian Authority, to talk about nonviolence, because we've done this before. Dr. King took a lot of hits after these 4 little girls were killed in Birmingham, because in fact they blamed him for it because it was just 2 weeks after his "I Have a Dream" speech. We've taken massive hits, and it's sad, but that is what happens in the freedom struggle. I mean, and I understand the quiet diplomacy, and I understand that, but I also know that what has been happening is not working.
Right.
What's pushing are these people who are being killed, and people are willing to put their bodies on the line and all that they have on the line, and they're losing their careers, they're losing their lives, losing everything. They are becoming stateless, and that is making a difference all over the world. And while I appreciate what the GCC countries are doing, and I get that, because a lot of them are they're personal friends. But I also know everyone models himself on what we did in the United States, because bucking slavery took a couple 100 years, and a whole lot of people died. So, I mean, and I'm telling you what Dr. Zogby said. I mean, because he's 10 toes down on this too. It
Yes,
feels like
he
I
is.
get it. And I'm just saying that has to be an element too. They do have to be pushed, because they are also going to lose the support of their people.
Can I also just say the thing that history has showed us over and over and over and over again, and it's playing out right in front of our faces once again? Your silence will not protect you.
Exactly.
And these countries, and I think you're being generous as far as I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree. I think there's a lot of self-preservation in there too for these leaders of these Arab nations, because the people in those countries, the people, as in our own country, the people are with the Palestinian struggle. The people
Absolutely.
are still in the streets. They're still in the streets. I've been there recently, where these states that have normalized relations with Israel are still in the streets protesting, demanding their governments do better and be better. And they're still not doing it. And yes, you're 1,000,000% right. There is a risk here, because there's also funding from the United States. I mean, that's what we see in Egypt. It's what we see in Jordan. It's what we see in a lot of these Arab nations. I mean, the UAE, I can't with them either, but there is a reality of what they could lose, but the people are with us and with humanity, frankly. And I do think that there is definitely a fear, but they can stay as quiet as they want. That's not going to protect them. It's not.
But let's
We
take
know
the
that.
example of Libya, for instance. So if you take the example of Libya, Gaddafi, Pan-Africanism, and the push for global liberation from the 60s and the 70s, you've got a good example of what the fear is among many leaders. And I can't truly speak for them, but what I'm saying is that I agree with your lesson from history. I think there's another lesson to also look at, which is when you see leaders who began to stand up, when you see Arab leaders, when you see African leaders, and especially when you see them join together and say, we have to push for liberation of oppressed people. Then what begins to happen is the dismantlement not only of your leadership and your country's stability, but in the end, you know, uh, taking you out, making sure
But
that your life is done.
but Alia, that's what that happens. I mean, sadly, I mean, there's
I understand that
speculation.
happens. It's to Rania's point, though, as she discusses
No,
self-preservation,
I
that an
understand.
element of that is going to be, at the end of the day,
I
who
understand.
wants that
Let me
to
say
happen
that
to themselves and their country.
when Dr. King walked into that pulpit April 4th, 1967, and went
Absolutely.
against the Vietnam War,
Hmm.
they didn't mind desegregation. Well, he dealt with that. But it's when he came up against the military industrial complex, when he finished that speech, and they killed him a year to the date to the minute,
Hmm.
his chief of staff, Reverend Dr. Wyatt T. Walker, walked up to him as he was walking out of the pulpit because he had been tortured. Dr. King used to have massive migraines. And in the last couple of years of his life, he was a chain smoker. Most people don't know that. He would he would jump because he knew that his life was on the line. He had just spoken. He was the central speaker at the largest anti-Vietnam march in America up to that point, of 1 million people in New York City, which, 60 plus years ago, massive. Reverend Dr. Walker said to him, Martin, you have just signed your death warrant. He said, I know it, but this
Yes.
is the right thing to do. I'm not asking people to be martyrs. When Reverend ran for president, most people, even Time Magazine, when they wrote the article discussing him running, they said, it looks like this is what he's going to do, but he's tempting fate. I'll never forget this, on many different levels, because Martin, Medgar, but all these people have been killed. And we would have people crying in the lobbies. And when they would see him speak, because they didn't think he was going to live. We didn't think he was going to live. But he sat and told my brothers and my sister and I, and Jackie was too young to get it, I want to take the ceiling off of your ambitions. And somebody's got to speak for the poor. We had been going to Lebanon. Somebody's got to speak for these Palestinians. What's happening to them is horrible. Somebody's got to speak to what's happening to the Nicaraguans. Nobody, and because Reagan was rolling through America, he had upended the biggest union up to that point. And I'm simply saying, and I hear you, I'm simply saying that what they're doing is not working. And if I got someone
Yeah.
as measured as Dr. Zogby, I've let other people
You're right.
who would say they need to get, I'm almost quoting him. He said they need to get off the stick.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because they will lose their credibility. And you know what? Just as we've seen this conversation on the Middle East shift, it happens just like that.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
blink. October 7th, they had another narrative for this. We blinked and this thing moved in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
And
I hope that the leaders of all nations will begin to stand more firmly with justice. I hope that they'll push in that direction. But I gotta say, we were blessed with Medgar and Malcolm and Martin and Che.
yeah,
we were blessed with people that were willing to put their lives on the line. We were blessed with Huey, right? People that were standing up and saying that this fight for liberation, this fight to claim dignity, not just over there, but over here and everywhere, that this is worth my personal 100 years on this tiny little
but
floating
believe me,
rock.
Reverend said to me,
We don't have that really.
no, yeah, but you got to get it, because my father said,
You got to get it, but I'm just saying
I know,
we have
I'm
to get
saying
back to a space that has that sort
you
of
have got,
integrity.
and that is my point. Otherwise, it's not there. It's not
Yes,
enough to be a
yes.
king or a queen. Nobody's thinking about that. Because my father looked
And
me
I
in my eye and said, look, if I go, that's why you all are in school. I need you to pick up this baton and keep on moving. Because if you stop this fight, you will go back to slavery, my children. That's going to happen to you. So I'm sorry. When I'm looking at it is not 60 or 70,000 Palestinians who've been killed. Let's just stop with that lie.
Right.
The Lancet study said it's hundreds of thousands of them who have been killed. Now, when is enough enough?
There
While
were
these people,
2.2 million Palestinians, Gazans, in that region on October 6th of 2023.
yes,
There were 2.2 million.
and they
I defy
projected-
anybody to show me any photo of that area that could now support 2.2 million.
I'm just saying
That's the number we're
I'm just
looking
saying
at.
what they're doing is not working.
And it's
No.
not
Well, and
just
I just
it's not just who's been killed. Even if the war stops tomorrow, it's whose fates are sealed. We're in the Jewish high holiday season in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where our tradition says like our fates are determined, who shall live and who shall die. And Israel has determined the fate of hundreds of thousands who are today alive, but will not live. Even if the war stops tomorrow, they are condemned to death from the starvation and the disease that has been placed upon them. And the soonest we can stop is today, tomorrow, right? Let's stop this immediately and see who can be saved. But hundreds of thousands of lives are doomed to be lost.
and I just two quick things, and then I swear I'm going to stop.
Sure.
The one, there are already there.
Jonah sees these women going at it. He's way back in his tree.
There are already babies being born with unbelievably rare cancers. There are babies being born with missing limbs. This is all part of the ecocide that's happening. But the thing I just want to go backward on Libya, on Iraq too, is we have to remember also that once somebody is not useful to us anymore, the military industrial complex, they're going to be taken out anyway. We've seen it happen over and over and over. So even if somebody is our ally right now, tomorrow they're not useful to us anymore, and they're going to get taken out. So I think, that we have to remember all of this kind of holistically, that self-preservation never works. Because you're only,
that's how that game works, sadly. I mean, I've been in this forever, and that's why, I mean, what you're hearing from me, Alia, is a plea, because, I mean, my brother went to school with the Crown Prince of Jordan. I take this personally. These are people I know. So it's like, wait. And these are people we have known for a long time. I just know that when people are desperate and when people's backs are against the wall, you're not safe. I mean, when Anwar Sadat signed the peace agreement, Jack O'Dell, one of the great icons of our struggle, said he will not survive this. He's not going to survive it. But he knew it was the right thing to do. But his people felt that he had sold out. And guess what? They took him out. Just a few years later, that's what they do. Jonah, you have been in between all these women. You can come forward, darling, and because you're not going to. I promise you, you're safe. This is baby just looking. But so what are your thoughts? I mean, what do you want to see happen? I can't believe the time is just moving like this. We only have like 5 minutes left. We have to have another conversation about this because everybody's passionate about it, and everyone is right here. I just think we want to see. We want things to be right now. That's it, Jonah. And because you came on my show and you interrupted all of the elders on the show and you said, look, I don't want the world you all have got. He's so measured. And he said, I don't want it. And that is not what you have, is not what I want. And I'm not going to have it. Everybody, there was silence. So I take it, give it back to you, young man.
Well, I agree with Dr. Zogby, and I have enjoyed listening to this conversation too. I mean, the Arab countries like UAE and Saudi Arabia, these are monarchies, oligarchies. This is, I mean, the people of those countries are who we should have loyalty to, and the people of those countries are extremely clear-eyed about what's going on in Gaza and are pro-Palestine. So to see their leaders not reflect views of their societies, to me, is, of course, it's a monarchy. That is what they would do, and those people are not going to be the ones to save us. We are going to be the ones to save us. It's about building people power here and everywhere, and solidarity around the world will trickle up to the people in power eventually, if people demand it enough. I don't subscribe to power trickling down from the top. I think if people come together, they can flip that dynamic on its head. And that's what we've been seeing all over the world. People out in the streets every week, every day in some cases, for 2 years. And it's gotten us not all the way there, but we're seeing movement. And I'm not waiting for the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. I'm not waiting for Jordan. I'm not waiting for the UAE. I'm not waiting for. We have to take this into our own hands as citizens of the world that care about what's going on, and that is what will eventually, I have to believe, trickle up to those in power.
It will save them. Literally, I have a minute for each of you. A minute. So when you hear my voice, I gotta run, because it's just I've got a tight timeline today. But I promise you, we will gather once again to have this discussion. But Dr. Amar, 1 minute.
I think the world has tired of the narrative that there's any justification for what's been happening to Palestinians. I hope that this opening of awareness then begins to extend backwards, because it didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened, in a context of ongoing oppression, ongoing violence that has become, for some people, cyclical, and for other people, an identifiable pattern. And so I want people to stop and ask themselves, what would you do? What would you do if your family could be ripped out of their home in the middle of the night, and people who just got off of a plane from another country and don't have any stories that link them to your land could claim your land, your neighborhood, your traditions? What would you do if they marched into your churches, into your synagogues with boots and beat you as you simply tried to pray? What would you do if they sprayed you with skunk gas, if they locked you into refugee camps? What would you do? What would you do? Would you fight back for yourself? Because to say that a people who are fighting for themselves should place a clock on that so that they simply surrender at some point, or should begin to think that their lives are not worthy simply because other people in the world have begun to dehumanize them, is an unrealistic and unjust expectation. So the best way to think of what needs to be done in some ways is to begin with a really simple question.
Okay.
What would you
do? Ariel Gold?
Things are changing, and they're changing quickly. They're changing in Jewish American community. I know I see it in my own family. There's a seismic shift that's taking place. And they're changing in American public opinion, but it's not going to be fast enough to save the lives of those who are already condemned to death. And we need to do all that we can to stop this and start turning this tide so we can get to the point of repair, right? Because right now we're just trying to keep it from getting worse. And then there's going to be long periods of repair. And that cannot come too soon. So I'll go back to, as I was saying, it's the Jewish high holidays right now, where, as we say, like, it is written in the book of life, who will live, who will die, who will prosper, who will fall short. And we talk about this being God-driven, but really it's human-driven. It's us who make these choices, right? It's us who determine who lives and who dies in Gaza by what weapons get sent from the United States there. And it's us who determines the outcome of our country as we head full speed into authoritarianism. So let's get busy.
Well, Joan, would you like to say anything before I give Ronnie the final word?
Well, going off of what Dr. Amar said, it actually made me think of Macklemore and his song Hins Hall that he put out during the campus protests. And one of the lines in that song that really stuck with me was, what if you were in Gaza? What if those were your kids? And that's I think the answer is clear to me. That's the ethic we have to bring to this. I don't have much more to say than that.
Well, that is a whole lot to say. Ronnie and Patrice?
Yeah, I think everything's already been said. I'll just say, kind of piggybacking off of what Jonah said a second ago, as far as the trickle up effect. We do, and Santita, you've heard me say this not funny joke, that rarely do politicians wake up deciding to do the right thing. We force them. There's exceptions, obviously, but we force them. We, the people, force them. And so we cannot look away. We cannot turn away. We have to. A lot of communities are under attack in our country right now. There's a lot of privilege in this country too, with a lot of cover. It's time. If there was ever a time to lock arms and be together and really lean into what collective liberation means, really what it means, not the buzzy cuteness of the words. What does it mean? It is now. It is now. It is not a week from now. It is not 10 months from now. It is now. So it's time, guys. It's just time for all of us, y'all. So thank you, Santita, always for giving us this platform to have these important conversations.
Well, it's the people's platform. It's our platform, and it is our collective issue. It is. I mean, as a descendant of American slaves, American people who were enslaved, it was a horrific. The transatlantic slave trade was horrific. We lost tens of millions of people. Then we got here and lost. If you look at the lynching museum down in Alabama, when they opened it in 2018, they had 5,000 representations of lynching. They were able to come. That is literally a lynching a month since we've been here. None of this is unique, but it all needs to stop. This is wrong. And there's nothing else to say about it. This is wrong. And either you're going to stand on this. My grandmother, may she rest in peace, she put it this way. She said, there's one way, the right way. That's it. It's that simple. I listen to our elders. I listen to the old folks. They tell us the truth. So I love you. And I'm going to talk about Trump's executive orders in the next hour, coming up right now. That's right. He is going after progressives, after the left. And it's not just Trump who is doing it. We don't need to call his name because it's not fair. This is a system, and it's a bipartisan betrayal, everybody, because there are corporations that want to shut us up and shut us down, and we need to be clear on that. Be clear on that. The Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Ronnie Patrice, Jonah Karsh, Dr. Alia Amar, and Ariel Gold, much love to you, and much love to you in this high holy season, Ariel and Jonah. May God bless you all in this wonderful season. It is a wonderful season, and we can all learn from each other, and we celebrate with you. God bless you. Love you.